Well, thank you, Doctor, for joining us. And just listening to Newell's introduction to you, just a biodata that diverse is key to the topic of what we're talking about. And the diversity comes into your life journey. So I'd like to start this session in asking you what brought you to the world of science and research, which historically has been, again, a male dominated industry.
So, when I first stepped into this, I hardly knew it was a male dominated industry. I was only about 15 years when I made the decision to, or rather, had this ambition to become a researcher, a scientist. And that was purely out of a passion for the subject, passion for science, mostly for biology. So I was fascinated by the workings of our living body, and especially at the molecular level. And even the little exposure that I got from my biology textbooks had me like really curious and fascinated. So at that time, nothing much was known to at least to us in our school about how a career can be built in science. So most people tended towards becoming a medical doctor, and I knew for sure that I didn't want to get into that profession. So while I was really looking for answers to what I could do with my passion in biology and the possible career path I could take, I was quite fortunate to receive some kind of career coaching around that time. This was back in 1994. And that is when I came to know about subjects like microbiology and biochemistry. And that planted that seed in me of wanting to like delve more into it. And once I decided that this is what I wanted to do, and then I convinced my parents that this is the path I wanted to get into, then there was just no looking back. It was just moving forward with focus and getting to one thing after the other, including my PhD one after the other, non-stop.
And that's what they say, the rest is history, right? So during this period, you would have had experienced many highs and lows. Are there any that you can share that stand out for you in memory that possibly would have led into a life-changing direction? For example, a low which led to the change, and then the high example, and how you took this to a better position, and how you embrace, empower, and empathize fits in all of these experiences.
So, as I mentioned, when I was younger, I was this really ambitious girl, very brave and confident that I could convince my parents to send me to the US back in 2001 by myself. And it was a time when there were no cell phones or credit cards or anything. And yet I had the confidence, and I could even impart the confidence in others to have that belief in me that I can do it. And I always believed in the fact that if you had this vision and goals set, one could achieve anything. And that was very obvious to me when I got my PhD at the age of 26 with a Dean's Award from Roswell Park Cancer Institute in the US. But what I actually, one low that I faced right after, I can say it totally changed my entire life journey. Because as I mentioned, I went with this ambition of becoming a cancer drug discovery researcher. It was very clear to me. And it's not that PhD is a very easy path. PhD itself poses a lot of challenge to PhD students. So it's not very easy. But in my case, despite the challenges, I persevered and I got the PhD within a short span. And I thought that that's it, that I felt very good about having stepped into my career very early, like 26, I had a PhD. And I thought that it would be like very soon I'll be at a higher position in this science career, and also in achieving my ambition, getting to becoming that cancer drug discovery researcher. So that is how I also got into AstraZeneca India. So that was tuberculosis drug discovery, but it was a great experience for me to understand drug discovery process. But then that is the time I faced with a personal challenge. So during this time, I was also married. I also got married. My husband, Captain Ashwin Nair, he is in the merchant marine profession. So a major part of our early time we spent kind of away from each other while I was doing my PhD and when he was sailing. So when the time came for us to start thinking of a family, that's when I faced my first big challenge, which was not being able to have children. And that actually first challenged my belief that everything could go as per your plan. So for the first time, I felt, no, you cannot plan everything. And that whole experience of going through the struggle with infertility treatments, then it also made me actually make a choice to give up my career, my like flourishing career at that time. And I mean, I got into that phase of wanting to achieve motherhood, and I wanted to give my 100% into it. And I felt that, look, being a biologist myself, I didn't want to take my own biology for granted, because although medicine and technology has advanced, human body has remained the same. So anyway, this was the challenge I faced. So I left my career and in order to in this pursuit. Yeah, so it was a little bit of like
I mean, that's a fantastic story of you shared there, with just getting PhD and then turning that academic profile actually into doing something and giving back in research. I mean, that's a great story. And then your challenge of family and family planning.
Yes.
And your husband is in the marine sector, and then that's core of one of our core businesses is in the marine sector, away from home for a long period of time.
Yes.
And then the challenges of normally just trying to establish a family, but the other challenges of what you have with your body is even something else. So that's
right.
a great sharing, and we'll come on to that in a short while. But you have now changing a little bit of diversity here. You've established a career as a coach and a public speaker with that inner theme of self-empowerment.
Yeah.
You have an excellent short video on your websites and the blogs that you do as well. Yeah. Why do we celebrate the festival of Onam?
Yes.
Can you briefly explain to us what that is, what's that festival, and how it's relevant? I think it's really relevant in today's world. How do you see that relevant in connecting with your inner theme, and what does this mean to you?
So in order to lead up there, I will just share a little bit of, just to continue from where I left my journey, how that moment actually changed my life. So when I went through that situation and had my career break, of course, as I said, it was initially a very tough time, but then I also found myself for the first time during that time, because till then I was just going based on goals and action, and that was my life. And then this time, it was like a forceful pause, and a lot of like getting in touch with myself, because I had to disconnect from the world at that point because of all the questions that I was being asked. I was like, I just needed my space. And that was the time when this creative spark first came to me, that is like through the form of a book. So this is very strange, because I was doing science, and then all of a sudden I had this idea to write a book, which is a memoir cookbook called Rumi's Foodies. So this is based on mine and my roommates' life in the US as graduate students. So this was like a very positive thing that came into me all of a sudden. And writing this book brought in a lot of positivity for me during this time. So it was such a coincidence. So I was able to conceive, and during my 9 months pregnancy time, I was also writing this book with my ex-roommate and friend, Meghna Joshi. And later on, this book went on to becoming a best-selling book as well, and also won an award for the runner-up award for the best digital book of that year. So I think this was the first time that I came in touch with the possibilities that exist within us, and some things we don't see in our race. Yeah, so coming back to your question, Darren, of the festival and all that. So in this journey, in the last 10 years, my life has gone in different directions. So because of the career break that I took, it was a major career break, about like 4 to 5 years. And together with the relocation to Singapore, I couldn't get back to research. And that started like that. That's the reason why I have these like diverse career, science career. And I just kept trying one after the other in order to find really, resonates with me. And I got into coaching and speaking because I was able to somehow bring in all of these life experiences of mine into this one thing, under one umbrella. because each time I speak, I find this passion coming up. Each time I coach, I find this fulfillment showing up. And that is where I feel I have come to a very nice and comfortable space to be. Now, regarding the celebration, like as you mentioned about the whole thing of like embrace, empower, and empathize, I'll discuss more about it. I also realize that it's very important to celebrate in life. So, which is when I started looking back into our own cultural festivals and celebrations and really understanding the meaning of it. And especially, we are all people staying away, far away from our families, and kind of missing it now. So, this particular festival, especially, is something that is celebrated. Um, to celebrate, and the whole belief is around the fact that a king who once ruled my state, Kerala, at a time when there was no what to say, I mean, everything was good around that time, in the place, no robbery, everyone was good, like treated others with respect and kindness. And so this king's name is Mahabali. So Onam is considered to be a time when this king is coming back to visit his people. So it is like kind of restoration of all that goodness and all that. And it made so much sense during this COVID time, to really even imagine that. So yeah, that's the reason why I created the whole video and shared that story, to really instill that feeling of goodness and kindness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's very fitting for this time as well.
It is
Yes.
indeed, yeah. I mean, it's amazing that you've actually achieved what we would have said, self-actualization, to finding out who you are, what your passion is about, and how you go and achieve what you want to achieve. And like yourself,
you.
I'm also a mother of two very young boys, probably much the same age with yours, and
Yeah.
and as a working mom,
Nice.
like all of us working moms, we have been so busy over the COVID period. What advice can you share with our network to help the working as well as the non-working moms watching right now?
Yeah, thanks for asking this question, Megha. It's a very relevant and meaningful question, and something which, yeah, as you said, we can relate so well, to. So I would first of all say that from the time I became a mom, there is this new feeling that I easily could recognize, which is like like with my two boys, it's almost like two lives outside of me, my own life outside of me. So each time like they fall or something, it just, I can feel it here. So first of all, it's an indescribable feeling, right, of a mother. And because of which I think there is a lot of other things that get associated with it, especially whether you're a working mom or a mom at home. There is this feeling of wanting to do a lot for them, but at the same time we have like our own stuff to do sometimes, and sometimes it's like it can be very tiring and taxing, especially with the little kids around. So one of the things that I have been talking a lot about and also practicing for myself is to overcome like some amount of guilt which mothers carry. For example, yes. For example, each time my little one is now 6 years, my older one is 10 years. But even then, even today, before COVID time, each day going to office was very tough because my little one would just literally like hug me and tell me, don't go, don't leave me, and I don't want to go to school and all that drama. But then I think I had to like overcome that and just go. And the good thing is that both of them are totally fine, and they're very happy with the little time that they get to spend with me after I come back. So first and foremost, I think as mothers, we have to believe and keep telling ourselves that you're doing enough, or already doing enough. And because that once you take away that load of guilt, that really is like quite liberating. So even today, like my kids are there, I told them I'll come, I have an interview, and so they are now very excited. Wow, mama, you're going to be interviewed, really? Yes.
That's
And
great.
letting go.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's about letting go, but I think a lot of people and a lot of families have found the challenges of being in the box, in the house or in the flat or apartment together. There's been loads of positivity because we wouldn't have normally have experienced that as well.
Yes.
Especially we go to work, we get detached, but being at home,
Yeah.
particularly, you can get more connectivity too. So that's fantastic. And just one of the last things I'd like to discuss with you. I know that there was a year, I can't remember which one, there was extreme flooding in southern India, in Kerala, where you're from. I know that the difficulties, or you shared some with us on that, is a massive challenge for you while you were there with your family. Are you able to share a little bit about that experience and what positivity you gained from that at all?
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, this was in 2018, and when people talk about unprecedented times now, that was my first unprecedented experience in 2000 facing these floods. So what happened was, yeah, there was this like unexpectedly flooding that happened in my state, and this was the day when I was supposed to come back to Singapore. And what I observed that time is also something very similar to what happened during this COVID time. Because number one is denial. When something like this happens to you out of the blue, you don't want to even believe that this is happening. And because of the fact that like, folks in my home, I was with my parents at that time, and they were like, no, our house won't be flooded. So you can literally see the flood water coming in, and they're like, no, this has not happened in the last 100 years. And so there is absolutely no need to worry. Because of which we didn't really relocate soon enough. There was no, like the action was not taken soon enough. And because of which we ended up staying in the house. Thankfully, it was a 2-story house and we moved to the top. And but then floodwater was like, it was just rising by the hour. And I could see like we were on the top floor and we're just like literally looking, and the first floor was getting completely flooded. And for the first time, I just started feeling like this so-called flight or fright response that people talk about, because like and you're in a position you could not like leave the place, and it was already dark and night time. And as a mom, again, my 2 kids were there with us, and like and immediately I was like, my God, what are we going to do with these 2 kids? How will we escape? And all those thoughts started flooding my mind. And yeah, yeah. But then, yeah, the next morning, morning around 5 o'clock, I hadn't slept really. So I started dialing up numbers, and I'd even, in that panic, I'd even made a Facebook post, because it was, I was like, if anybody knows someone to like who can send rescuers, please do, because I was just not able to get to any of the hotlines that were shared during that time, because they tend to get choked. And the way the water levels were rising, I was really worried, right? So I could see that I was in action, like really trying to think how to escape. And quick decisions had to be made. So this was like decision making put to the test. So because like rest of the people with you are like still thinking nothing will happen. So even my mom challenged me to think. She said, you're a motivational speaker, and shouldn't you be thinking positively at this time? So I told my mom, if we sit here and meditate and just pray that let the flood go away, I don't. That is being very impractical. So anyway, so I was the one who took charge. I told my husband, let us get out of this place before the water levels rise too much. It was risky, but then we decided to get out, just go and find if there are rescue workers nearby. And that decision actually helped, because we found rescue workers. They could send like a small like makeshift boat made with tires that could go into the house and bring in my parents, my grandparents, my children. All were rescued within the next 2 hours. And fortunately, I could go to a friend's place, and I mean, it was like already packed with 18 other people, but we at least had a safe place to go to. And because my husband said he went back for rescue efforts right after, and he found that the water levels had risen too much, that we wouldn't have been able to do this if we had waited long.
So I guess that was a massive life-changing experience, not just for you, but for your 2 sons as well. And what I loved about that was that I took charge.
The moral of the story is always listen to your wife, right?
So that was crisis leadership, which we'll talk about in another session of Diverse Talks, crisis leadership. But also I noticed that you said you got a small boat, my immediate thought was, well, whether your husband being a captain in the marine sector, whether he checked that boat out before you got in it. But no, that's fantastic sharing and amazing, your inspirational journey with us. And before we wrap up, is a few words of encouragement or inspiration you'd like to share with the audience and to empower and empathize, like your methods, your statements are with the community that's watching.
Yes, sure. So I'll just tell you where this embrace, empower, and empathize came from. So first of all, embrace is to embrace oneself, to accept as yours, who you are, and also embrace others and accept as they are. Because most often we try to try to change people around us, and of course we have to make an effort to change ourselves if we find there is something really that we need to change. But if we don't embrace ourselves, our weaknesses first, and understand that, it would be difficult to make that change. So first and foremost thing is to do that. To embrace us as who we are. Number two is to empower. So when I talk about empower, because as I have been involved in a lot of gender equality efforts and in women empowerment as such, what I've realized is that unless you empower yourself from within, nothing else really matters. So even if the whole policy or organizational changes happen in order for all this diversity and inclusion to happen, unless you feel it from within that you deserve to be there, nothing will make a difference. So the change has to first come from within, that I deserve it. I deserve to be here. That is the self-empowerment that I think we need to keep in mind. And once you are self-empowered, do devote some time in empowering others. That is the whole thing about. And empathize is something coming from all of these experiences that I talked about, because as human beings we do go through unique challenges. So sometimes when we are interacting with others, we may not think about it. We are always thinking maybe very task oriented, especially in professional relationships. But if you're able to empathize and see yourself in that other person's situation, hopefully your relationship wouldn't sour so much. Hopefully you'll be able to have a better working relationship with each other, and even in personal relationships. So this is the whole thing, that really I believe in. And I would like to spread this message on that.
Very good. Empowering, embracing, and empathy. Thank you once again, Dr. Lakshmi.